Start, yeah. My question was about the whole in Jodo Shinshu. There seems to be a teaching or teachings about not relying or praying to any other heavenly gods or benevolent deities in Jodo Shinshu.
Or kami, in the
The
Japanese.
kami, yeah.
Gods,
So my question about it was something I wanted to kind of raise.
yeah, it's an
Because
interesting topic.
yeah, because there does seem to be teachings that say
I think I find it interesting that you consider the four heavenly kings to be the nearest. That's an interesting, probably cultural kind of thing. Because
maybe,
I think
yeah,
in Japan, there's a lot of gods,
yeah,
millions and billions and trillions. And generally, the ones that are like people are devoted to are the ones that are the closest to them, right? Like the local rock, that is a kami, or the Benzaiten, who's one of my favorites. And Benzaiten is actually Sarasvati from, Hindu mythology. Um, and man, this is really one of my favorite topics. I could definitely
cool,
go
yeah,
on for a
okay.
while. So let
This
me know
might be
when
one
I'm
for the
when
Lotus
I'm
pods.
waxing. Let me know when I'm getting too nerdy or whatever. But Benzaiten is like the goddess of, I believe, art and various things. She's usually associated with water. So, for example, there's a temple in Western Tokyo that is on a pond, kind of, and there's a bridge, and it's just beautiful traditional Japanese shrine. And that shrine is a shrine to Benzaiten, or of Benzaiten. And when I went there with my girlfriend, she got a yin bill and dipped it in the water, and then laid it out on the stone to dry. And I was like, what's going on? What is that all about? And then she explained to me that, well, the Benzaiten, the water has this power that will enable you to make more money. And I was like, oh, okay. And, people, it's often said that the Japanese aren't like super religious or whatever, but they're definitely very spiritual people. And I think that, like, just because someone doesn't officially belong to, I mean, it's like people here in America, right? Like, a lot of people don't go to church, but people still have, still might be spiritual in their approach to things, in the universe. And like, I think more people in America probably believe in God or some form of the divine than actually are a member of a church, right? Like, because it's such a widespread belief. But anyway, yeah, I think in Japan anyway, definitely the god that's closest to you is the one that you definitely are going to be, doing business with.
it makes me think of the Ferengi, god in Star Trek.
Well, I mean,
Yeah,
what else is it? You get a yin bill and dip it in the water, and it's
yeah,
going to make more money. I mean, it
yeah.
sounds like doing
It's
business to me.
yeah. It's yeah, it's definitely what's the Jodo Shinshu teaching about all this? What's the yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I'm
Well, I think Johann knows what it is. Um, but so there's a lot. I think there's a lot to unpack here because a lot of it depends on like you as an individual, like I don't know that I necessarily believe in the existence of, gods and such. Like I think that I definitely appreciate, for example, the I think I more appreciate various gods and so on as the objects of human devotion and as the creations, basically as projections of human needs and desires, right? Kind of. Um, I don't know that they have, in fact, I'm pretty sure that I don't believe they have some sort of objective existence. So that, for me, that already kind of strikes out the idea that I'm going to pray to this deity that's separate from myself in order to sort of receive some sort of gift or power from it. I mean, it basically would make prayer for me personally, speaking personally, by the way, is like an exercise, right? Like sort of like meditation. It's not I mean, all the time I was in Japan, I had nothing if I go to shrines or temples or whatever, and I have nothing but respect for all the various objects of people's worship. Um, and I always, whatever the god or the Buddha or the Bodhisattva is, I would always just put my hands together and say Namu Amida Butsu and bow my head because that's what Rinyo teaches us. And I guess we'll get into that in detail is that all of these, you know, commies and gods and manifestations, they're all actually manifestations of uh, the the primal vow and Amida's wish to save all beings. So I guess first part of it, it comes down to who, as an individual, what kind of beliefs do you hold about say the four heavenly kings, right? Like I don't know that I'm kind of agnostic. Well, not agnostic, but like I don't know in what way the four heavenly kings exist, and I'm not other than as huge statues outside of Japanese temples. Um, I recognize that there's a subjective belief and so on that people have in those, as deities or as divine figures, but I think the real intent of Buddhism and especially of Jodo Shinshu is actually to point us toward kind of the uh, the truth of things beyond kind of these, you know, um, gods and goddesses and so forth. Not that those aren't um, fine, but I guess it depends on how much belief do you have in these things, right? I'm pretty, I'm not a very I'm not a very good believer when it comes to this stuff. So that doesn't mean I don't respect it. It's just I've never personally, had one of these gods like appear to me in a vision or, and there's people who have, by the way. I mean, you know, uh, in everywhere, really. So I'm just not that lucky, I guess. I'm not favored by the gods or whatever. So I don't have it's not a huge issue for me to just ignore them for the most part, other than, appreciating the art and the beauty of, how humans have kind of made these deities to answer to their various needs spiritually and otherwise. So that's my perspective. So that of course is going to that perspective actually kind of leads me to really appreciate the Shinshu, the Shin Buddhist view, which is that we actually don't have to worry about any of that, and we can just focus on, Amida, right, truth, the Dharma, and the relationship between people and that truth. Some of the other things, because you can really get into the weeds with the whole, uh, um, cosmology and various, gods and stuff. I mean, in Japan alone, like I said, there's millions and billions and trillions of these deities out there. But for me, it's like, I don't have to really worry about all that because I have the Nembutsu. So yeah, I think it really depends on what your personal. I'd like to hear Johan's and also yours,
Hmm.
Gangkai's, kind of own personal perspective. Because
Hmm.
do you think it's fair to say that what your personal beliefs are about God slash goddess slash gods goddesses is gonna, you know, sort of define how you set out, right, on in your approach to this topic?
Well,
You go,
if
Johan. Yep. Go ahead. Yep.
yeah, well, I mean, yes, naturally, and as you speak, I think, obviously it's sort of whether or not one believes in the gods is kind of irrelevant from a Shin perspective, because the only thing that's necessary for salvation is believing in Amida. I think you're quite correct about that. That said, I mean, I do believe in believe in the sense of, because that's kind of a funny thing when you speak to Japanese people, because I think there's sort of a little, I don't speak Japanese, so you'll have to correct me here if I'm getting this wrong, but I think there's a bit of a kind of nuance that gets lost there, because believe in seems to connote, when I speak to Japanese people, like having faith in or having trust in. That those two concepts seem to get conflated. Whereas in English, to believe in
Yeah,
something, like an ontological thing, I believe it exists, doesn't imply that
right. You have to, I think you have to specify in Japanese, like kami no sonzai o shinjite iru. So to believe in the existence of gods, right?
Right, right.
And I'm not even saying, just to be clear, by the way, I'm not saying I don't necessarily believe in their existence, but I believe in their existence as a subjective, like when I see, for example, an old lady praying to, you know, whatever, Kami or Benzaiten and so forth, I have to acknowledge the existence of that faith, right? And I have to respect that existence in that sense. But I don't know that I believe in the God as like an objective existence. I should have been maybe more clear
No, no,
about
I
that.
think you were being clear on that, and I respect what you're saying. I just mean that, um, I believe in their, when I say I believe in their existence, I mean that in the sense of their objective existence. It's just not something that's terribly relevant to my spiritual, or our, spirituality, because it doesn't figure. I mean, there's a place for it. What's the word I'm looking for? Doctrinally, right? But it's not really important as manifestations of Amida, but it's not important in terms of, not practice, but in terms of my spiritual life, it doesn't really figure in much beyond, I show respect. I mean, when I'm around places of worship. Um, but there is a question here which is interesting, and I spoke about this with Gankai, and I'd like your perspective on this. Um, maybe you're more familiar with kind of doctrinal discussions about this than I am. It's not clear to me. I mean, obviously, so it's often communicated one should not uh, pray to deities for, and I'm not talking here about enlightenment, for whether it be worldly things, like, for example, I don't, I would like someone's illness to go away, or for strength, or whatever it may be, but anything that isn't uh, enlightenment, right? Um, why exactly that's an issue for someone who has Shinjin. Now, personally, I don't do that. I don't feel the need to do that. But I can't say that comes from kind of a doctrinal position. It's more like it just doesn't come to me. I mean, I'm sort of sated by what I get from Mida, but hypothetically, someone else, right? Like if someone else were to say, yes, I trust the Mida, I'm feel fully confident of of um of my salvation in the afterlife, but I'd like to pray to I don't know, in in China, it's pretty common to pray to Guan Yin. I mean, amongst people who believe Guan Yin to meet like a romantic partner. And if they said, I want to do that, what do you think? I mean, like, I don't know. Go ahead. I mean, like, I don't think Amita's going to rescind his Shinjin because you do that. So it's that sort of thing. Like I'd like, and I haven't
Yeah, I
tried.
actually had when I was visiting Joe Kyoji, which you might actually know, Johan. Joe Kyoji in Nara, where Ziken Inagaki um,
I've
gave a
never been
lot
to
of
Nara.
Dharma talks. Yeah. Um,
So
but
share. Yeah.
I happened to be there, and there was a visiting, the people from Taiwan were visiting.
Oh, right.
Taiwan, yeah, the Horai organization in Taiwan, and also Hong Kong.
Mm, mm.
And there was this, and so there was this, this group, and one of them was this lady who, and I was just asking her like about, Buddhism and stuff, and what were her beliefs, and she was like, she was interested in, Shin Buddhism, and obviously that's why she was there on that journey. But I could tell her face really lit up when she described her, her statue of Kanon Bosatsu, Guan Yin, and how she prayed to that. And I could tell like that was clearly the sort of the folk religion that she really kind of gravitated toward, And so I was like, oh, that's cool, great. I mean, the good thing about Buddhism is we don't actually like, you know, we don't judge people for what they believe, right?
And also it
But
could be
also she wasn't
upaya.
claiming to be a shitty Buddhist, right? But to answer Johann's
Yeah.
question, so
Mm.
what do I think about? So specifically, my opinion is this: if you're satisfied with the Nembutsu, like you said you are, then you're not going to have. It's not going to occur to you to look elsewhere, right? Like if Namo Amida Butsu, if the primal vow, if this dharma and this truth is enough for you, and it's 100% spiritually satisfying to you personally, you're not gonna like you're not gonna still be shopping around. You know what I mean? Like, and I think your perspective and actually what you said is incredibly perceptive because it really does depend on your as an individual, what kind of relationship do you have to the Dharma, right? And in other words, um, and so I think that's really the important point is, to the extent maybe that you are feeling some sort of need to pray to various bodhisattvas or Buddhas other than Amida or so on, well, maybe you're not quite settled, or maybe you don't fully understand the implications of Shin Buddhism to that degree. You know what I mean? Possibly. I'm just throwing that out there. I don't know. Like,
Although,
what do you think of that?
yeah, I'm just because I you know might even be the same
I don't
person.
mean you personally, by the way. I'm saying
No,
you in
I get that. I get
particular.
that. No, and again, I should just reemphasize that, like, I personally, you know, uh, what's the word? Petitionary prayer isn't something I do, right? But my my qualm here is that it's at the same time, it's not something that I can see. I know other people who engage in it. People I regard would regard as people of Shinjin and people I respect. Um, Now, do I like wag the finger at those people and think that there's like sort of something this, or do does that lead me to doubt their Shinjin? And that's not really my business to do one way or the other, really, is it?
Yeah.
But I have to say
Yeah,
I
I
don't.
think So one of the reasons we don't pray, do petitionary prayer, like you said, is that we, as Buddhists, we understand, how karma works, right? And we understand, maybe not understand in the way that, a bodhisattva or a Buddha understands, but we know that the law of karma governs the things that happen, right, in our lives and so on and so forth. And that it's not, we can't like pray to the Buddha, oh Buddha, remove this heavy karma from me. um, so in that sense, it's a little different from believing in a all-powerful deity or a creator like a lot of people do.
Yeah, sorry. I said this last time in our conversation, but I really just want to repeat this um to Gabriel because I think it's relevant to what you're saying. I didn't grow up Christian or of any religion. I grew up in a completely secular household, so prayer wasn't something I grew up with. But so encountering Buddhism and religion for the first time, one of the things I found particularly compelling about Shin was this lack of petitionary prayer because there seems to me something kind of spiritually dangerous in petitionary prayer because if you pray for something and it's just something I've observed with other people, if you pray for something and you don't get it, then you get angry, right? Or there's this
Mm.
danger.
I'm sorry. I
There you
just
go.
said, well, it's like it can be an ego trip, right? The self and its needs and
The so I want to say, well, there's a few things with what you had said, Kyokan, about um, your perspective on it. And that does seem your perspective does seem to be, mentioning about, you mentioned how you kind of you often bring in the cultural, you know, context of something, and that definitely your perspective on sort of the devas and Buddhist cosmology, it does seem like a very Western
yeah, and
kind
I
of
want to be clear,
Western
that's just my
Buddhist kind of. Yeah,
personal
yeah,
viewpoint,
yeah,
right? I
yeah,
mean,
yeah, yeah. Yeah, but no, I'm just putting it in that context again, because that is you're not your perspective on it is not uncommon especially in Western amongst Western Buddhists. Um, with me
yeah, true,
personally,
true.
yeah, with me personally, um, it's important to the whole holistic teaching, Buddhist cosmology for me. I kind of see it on a number of different levels. On one hand, I see it as actual realms that beings, you know, are born into and exist in and experience. On one, that's one level. Another level, I see it on the level of that all of Buddhist cosmology, including our own cosmology, as it were, is part of a mind map, is the Buddhist mind map. It's one big mind map. It's a state of consciousness. It's a you know it's mental states, psychological states, but it's also teaching. The cosmology itself is a teaching. So I see it on all three levels. I I sort of see I view or approach or experience, I guess you would say, Buddhist cosmology from all three of those levels or perspectives or viewpoints. Um, it became more important in Jodo Shinshu, interestingly, than it was in other forms of Buddhism had explored. Um, when I'd explored other forms of Buddhism, my whole thing was it all had to be focused on the Enlightenment project. All had to be focused on the, however gradual or immediate that was. So nothing was important to me but mind states and you know the practices and and merit and the originally the whole or ultimately the main goal, the main focus was just on realization of Buddhahood. was do you see what I mean? So in other forms of Buddhism, the more self-powered, you know, quote unquote, if you like, forms of Buddhism that I explored for many years, that was my focus. I didn't really the aspects of Buddhist cosmology weren't in other aspects, I should say, of Buddhist cosmology weren't important to me, other than where they bore on that ultimate goal of realization of Buddhahood. But when I came into Jodo Shinshu, that focus changed because it was all flipped. It was flipped to complete other power, and it to me it became even more important because I realized it was when I was listening to when I was a part of the Trushin Buddhism group, and I was listening some Paul Roberts um, videos and some of his writings explaining the teachings. I realized, wow, I'm not gonna I can't just get to grips with how this pertains to my own Buddhahood. It I had to get to grips with the whole thing, the whole the whole the whole teaching. Suddenly, it wasn't just to it's we in Jodo Shinshu it became a more holistic thing for me. I had to see the big picture suddenly, whereas in the other forms of Buddhism I didn't feel the need to do that, but in Jodo Shinshu I did. Um, and that just grew kind of as I went along. So that was one thing. Another thing is it's important to my entrusting to the teachings that I understand and embrace all of the teaching as much as I can within my limitations and all of that. My karmic limitations, my capacities, my whatever. That it's important to me to embrace that cosmology as part of the overall Buddhist teaching. When I how do I put this? When often in my Jodo Shinju path, I would feel the need to go back. Okay, I got to go back to I got to go back to basics, or I got to go back to a step before Jodo Shinshu, if you see what I mean, to kind of understand the teaching. And that would often lead me back to other aspects of Buddhist cosmology, not just other realms and things, but kind of how reality itself and how that comes about, starting with from the 12 nidanas through all the different, do you know what I mean? All those different points of reference and teaching in Buddhism about those things. So to me, it's important to my sort of entrusting of Buddhism, my trust of Buddhist cosmology is a big part of that. And to me, Buddhist cosmology makes more sense to me than any other spiritual cosmology that I've ever explored or encountered or experienced, if you see what I mean. And so that's why it's a
Well, yeah, and for
yeah,
the most
yeah,
part, I mean, Buddhist cosmology is actually Hindu cosmology,
yeah,
right? Or
yeah,
in
yeah.
Indic, ancient Vedic cosmology to some degree. I mean, it was just the way people conceived of the world at that time, right? And I don't think the Buddha didn't like rock the boat and try to, the Buddha taught within that context. You know what I mean? Like, does that make sense? Is
Mhm,
that's my perspective. I
mhm.
mean, and when people say that, sometimes, well, you know, does that mean that the Buddha could have, introduced quantum mechanics in the middle of, I mean, I think we get into some
I
kind
would
of
argue he did.
Uh-oh.
strange.
I would argue he actually did. But anyway,
Yeah.
sorry.
But yeah, no, I see your point exactly.
Yeah.
Actually, what I think is cool is how your focus shifted from the sort of because you were hunkered down in the I've got to get there, I've got to get enlightenment kind of that narrow focus, right? Which
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
kind of in keeping with the Shodomon, or not the Shodomon, but more like kind of like what in Mahayana we call the Hinayana, sort of just finding I got to get there on my own by my own
Yeah.
power. And then, Shin Buddhism really broadened your perspective, and you saw, I think, yourself in the context of this incredible, working of other power. And that's exactly what it does is, it draws us out of that narrow self-obsessed, not self-obsessed, but what's the word I'm looking for? Uh focus on your own issues, right? Into this, bigger picture. So,
Yeah.
but I do think the goal, obviously is still the same.
Yeah.
But yeah, yeah. Thanks for sharing.
Thanks. I think Johan is just is burning to jump
Yeah,
in it.
I didn't want to interrupt your flow. I just wanted to add sort of a lot of what you said there resonated with me. I mean, about a part of my entrusting entailing um kind of accepting the sort of the Buddha Vachana wholesale. Um and I mean there's that that passage people like to bring up now I forget it's in the Pali Canon. It's the advice to Kala um the Kala the be a light unto yourself passage.
Kalama Sutta.
Yeah, I think it is that one. Um, yeah, but the don't accept things except for based on your own experience, and sort of the way I square that circle is, well, my experience is my experience of Shinjin, um, and based on that, I kind of I can trust the everything else that Shakyamuni says, even if it's not something I can kind of understand in what sense it's true. Um, and I sort of relate that to the you're all familiar that passage from the Tani show about I know Ramita's real, therefore I know what Shakyamuni says is true. But the real thing I want to say is that what it brings to mind is this thing. Yuki Sugahara sensei, who's one of my favorites. I'm not sure if this is a coinage of his or he takes this from someone else, but it's that, he says, I'm a Buddhist, not a selfist. So I take, kind of the Buddha's word as my point of departure, not what I think. And I don't mean that in a
That's
prescriptive
really good.
way. Yeah, yeah. But it's just I like that resonates with my experience and my approach and
Yeah,
again
a
for
lot
me
of
it sort of
Western
comes
Buddhists have
naturally.
definitely, I think, gone too far in the radical, like rationalistic direction. Um, and, I think there's a problem there, to be honest.
Mm.
So I do agree.
Hmm. Hmm.
There's another thing I wanted to interject too was one there was a teaching that the Buddha gave that it's good to contemplate Buddhist cosmology, to examine it or meditate in certain ways upon it or reflect on it. I can't remember what the exact, but it there's a there is one of the sutras. It's he's the Buddha says that in one of the sutras. I can't remember exactly what it was, but that kind of always comes back to me too. That you know the Buddha himself had said this is
Mm.
important. However,
I wonder
you
if
know,
we should get back to the
yeah,
god and gods and goddesses
mm,
topic because I will have to leave pretty
yeah,
soon.
yeah.
So and of course we can always I can join next week, but if we want to discuss that a little bit more, or I think maybe Gankai, you had something you wanted to um share
Uh,
about that.
oh yeah, I think. Well, the other thing I wanted to say too, one other thing I wanted to say is when you said about if you're satisfied, fully wholly satisfied with an Nembutsu, um, I have heard another Buddhist teacher say that, another Jodo Shinshu teacher say that or often they say that if you're if you're if you're a person of Shinjin, if you're satisfied with fully wholly satisfied with Nembutsu, then you won't feel the need to look anywhere else, basically. Um, I have heard that. Yeah, it's said almost exactly the way that you said it yourself before, and and part of that does make sense to me. Um, Part of that
It's
does
probably
make sense
because
to
we're
me.
quoting Rinyu.
It's from Ren.
I could share the passage from
Yeah,
Kan or from
please. Yeah,
Gobunji.
please do. Yeah. Is Can
Please
you
do.
share? Can you share the? Yeah, allow that. There
Let
you
me
go. Yeah, there we
see.
go. Yep, I've allowed it. There you go.
Okay, great. Yeah, I just was because the issue really of kami veneration and how does that fit in
Mm,
with Shin Buddhism and so on was kind of one of the issues that Rinyo had to address quite a lot. Um, and so in one of his letters, he says, uh, this is quite a well-known one. Why is it that, in relying on Amida Tathagata, we completely reject the myriad good deeds and practices, designating them as the sundry practices? It is because of the great vow in which Amida Buddha has promised to save sentient beings who rely on him single-heartedly and steadfastly, however deep their evil karma may be. Therefore, single-heartedly and steadfastly means that we take no other Buddha as peer to Amida Buddha. This is the same as the rule in human society that one relies on only one master. Hence, in the words of an outer non-Buddhist text, a loyal retainer will not serve two masters, a faithful wife will not take a second husband. Since Amida Tathagata is the original teacher and master of all the Buddhas of the three periods, how can all the Buddhas who are his disciples not rejoice when we rely on that Buddha who is the master? You must understand the grounds for this very thoroughly. Now, this is the passage, Gonkai, that people tend to talk about. So, since the substance of practice, Namu Amida Butsu, encompasses all the kami, so
hmm
gods,
hmm Yeah.
goddesses, objects of worship, whatever they may be, Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, and besides these, each and every one of the myriad good deeds and practices, what could be lacking that would necessitate our putting our minds to the various practices and good deeds? The name Namu Amida Butsu completely embodies all the myriad good deeds and practices. Hence, it is surely trustworthy.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah.
So Renyo is making the argument, right, that, a lot of people, including myself, say, which is that, well, the Namo Amida Butsu encompasses all of that. All of the gods, all of the Buddhas, all of the Bodhisattvas, all of the virtues and merits, all of the entire Eightfold Path. It's all in the six characters of Namu Amida Butsu.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
when you feel a sense of spiritual satisfaction with Namu Amida Butsu,
Yeah.
it's not your perspective changes because it's not like Namu Amida Butsu is I'm narrowing down on this one narrow thing. It's rather that Namu Amida Butsu becomes like fills the screen.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
it expands and it becomes it's everything. So you actually become this part of Namu Amida Butsu, and you
Yeah.
become one with Namu Amida Butsu, and so you don't the question or the idea like, oh, shall I pray to this, shall I pray to Benzaiten for money,
hmm
or should I commune with Kanon Bosatsu, kind of becomes its mood because all of that is already
In the Yeah.
what you're getting in the Nembutsu. And Kanon Bosatsu is cheering is happy about that. And Benzaiten is happy about that. In fact, they're all cheering you on. Everything is cheering you on,
Yeah.
including, by
Yeah.
the way, the supposedly evil demons and stuff who have been converted by Shakyamuni to be guardians of the Dharma, everything's cheering you on because everything, you've realized their original intent anyway. So, there's no, so I just think of all of these things. It's like everything is a friend for me. All beings, like the one on your lap and yourselves and, whatever is in the air. Everything is a friend of people who have really taken the Nembutsu to heart because, that's that it's the whole enchilada, to use a really stupid American expression.
Glad you brought that in because that is like I think central and key to this that passage, that teaching is central to this discussion. So
Yeah.
I'm glad you
And I
brought
think,
that in.
their perspective changes because, like, if I see the great heavenly generals outside a Buddhist temple in Japan or whatever, I'm like, oh, hey, Shiten no Sama. I mean, how's it going? And I'll be like, like I don't have to be, because I've already got it all, right? Namu Amida Butsu. So the same response, the same thing that I say is the same thing that I would always say, which is Namu Amida Butsu. Because
Yeah,
it's all there,
yeah.
and the Tenno Samas are included in the, by the way, Shiten Noji in Osaka, if you are into the Four Heavenly Kings, that's like literally the
The
Four
ultimate.
Heavenly Kings temple that was built by Prince Shotoku. Um, and there's a
Very cool.
statue of
Yeah,
Shinron on the grounds.
yeah. I have heard of
There's
it in
a
my
statue of
actually.
Shinron right
Yeah,
there in Shitennoji Temple in Osaka. It's not even a Shin Buddhist temple. So, but again, that's my
very
person. I'm
cool.
not saying this is right for everybody. Just this is how my perspective is that when you're at home in Namo Amida Butsu, you're just you don't feel the need for things that are outside of Namo Amida Butsu because you realize there is nothing that's outside. It's all everything is contained. The entire path is there in the six letters Namu Amida Butsu, or Kimyo Jinjipo Mugeko Nyorai, or Namo Fukashi Ko Nyorai. I mean, it's all there. It's
It
the whole deal. So
yeah. It
anyway,
almost
I'll
it
let you
almost
guys go. And
okay.
sorry, I can't stay for the whole
No worries.
episode.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
All right.
Good to see you again. So yeah, that no, it's
Well,
good to we can continue. Yeah, you can go. You can continue, right?
yeah,
You
yeah,
want
yeah.
yeah.
I can keep going. Yeah,
So
and then
my
too.
no, it's good. It almost takes away um it almost takes away the need for it because it's
Mm,
already if everything's already contained in Nembutsu, you don't have a need. There isn't that need for you to ask for it. This is what I was saying in our original conversation about this. What what you what you need has already been given. What you need is already happening. If you see what I mean. Um,
mhm.
through the good from the past, meet is good from the past, through the working of the vow, through merit transference, through all those things, through Nembutsu, through the call, through the light. Um, it's just there's times where I think people still need or want something else. Do you see what I mean?
Mhm.
And I, including myself in the past, but most of the time I see that perspective. Most of the time I see everything's contained. It's already done. It's already been what you need is already there. and it's
Yeah,
all summed up
yeah.
in Nembutsu. You can say Nembutsu. Anyway,
I mean, it reminds me of a question I was discussing it. Well, was raised. I wouldn't raise it. Someone else raised it, but it was raised at a Dharma meeting I attended recently about kind of where do you go for advice or counsel on worldly issues um within a Shin context. Is that something that Shin provides for? And I feel like that's the root of that's the root cause of the question of petitionary prayer now. Um and I think there is a Shin response to that, but it's not, I don't know, it's not a direct one. I mean, for my part, it's that, kind of everything that you face and you tackle is within the context of knowing that it's all going to pan out okay in the end, right? So
yeah,
so
yeah,
um it has to be said that doesn't negate and personally I find that satisfying, but and it is where it's like where I find it like hard to articulate this is because I can see what someone else would say. I can see where that other people might not find that satisfying, right?
yep,
And it's not
exactly.
inconceivable to
Yep.
me that someone, right? And I feel that there has to be like a response to that or taking account of that. Um, because you can easily see the question of like, uh, well, I still have to live a life, and how do I tackle these kind of concrete problems with which, however unsatisfying we might find, and that I personally wouldn't do that, but the Christian or Abrahamic, help me with this problem, dear Lord. That his response to those problems, right? And I could also see someone saying like, oh well, Johan, you don't have to deal with these things because your karma is such that, life's always kind of worked out pretty okay for me. I haven't had any like, you know, I could see someone making that argument, right?
Hmm.
I could have
Hmm.
been born in much worse circumstances. And what does he say to that person? And so I'm not really thinking of this in terms of my own needs because it's something where I'm very content, but other people have needs, and necessarily because how we're talking now, this is about also addressing other people's needs. Um, so there has to be a reply to that. Um, I mean, like
Well,
one
I think
question
Renyo
is,
gave it. That passage from Renyo's writings in a way, because it's all in there. I guess that's the I guess that's what it
mm,
comes back to. But I see what you're saying as well, and I've had that need that you're talking about. I have had things happen in my life that um, I mean, that's the whole the um are partly responsible for how deeply I've searched in my journey, spiritually speaking, um, because I was driven by some pretty horrible things that have occurred in my life, and um, and yeah, we just won't get into details of that, but of various things, and not just one event or anything like that. It's just throughout life, different things that have occurred, and so yeah, there are times where I think, oh, I just wish I could just, you know, pray, in that more petitionary kind of way. Um, um, but ultimately, in the bigger sort of context of Buddhism and the teachings and my experience, it just doesn't really make sense to do that. If you see what I mean. Um,
mm,
I don't know, especially in Shin Buddhism, because it's all done in a sense. if your birth is going to be secured and settled, sort of what else is there? And I know, there's teachers that say that as well, that what else do you need? That if that's solved, if that is solved, then what else is there to worry about? Do you see what I mean? I mean, obviously in life there is a lot to worry about and be stressed about and things, but yeah. You seem like
Yeah,
you're
I mean
really
it's
struggling with this
no,
this
I'm not
part
struggling.
of
I'm
the
just trying to, it's what I'm trying to do is put myself into imagining myself into another person's shoes, right?
yeah,
Like, yeah, I don't I sure, with everything you're saying, I find that satisfying, but this is an issue for me. You know what I mean? So I'm trying
yeah,
to imagine myself in shoes for some for whom it is an issue, and then
yeah,
it's like, okay, but would that be to that other hypothetical person that I haven't had those experiences? Would that be satisfying? And that's a very hard kind of mental
yeah.
operation to do. Um,
Because you have
so
empathy.
I
Because you have
well,
empathy.
yeah,
Yeah. So,
I'm trying,
same
but
here.
like.
So yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's I'm trying to do that, and it's like I don't know. So yeah, I mean,
And I've been in both places. At
right.
times I've been in that place where, oh, really need to just be able to rely on, in that other more traditional way. And then I've also been in the place of, well, what else is there to be worried about? Do you see what I mean? I've been in both places. Um,
I mean, like when I sort of reflect on my own experiences, at the absolute worst ex places points I've been in my life, right? I mean, this is after coming to Buddhism, so it doesn't really work if I look at the things that happened before. Um, I didn't turn to petitionary prayer. That didn't even really occur. That didn't even really come to me to do.
yeah,
Like I said, what
yeah.
part of what attracted me to Shiva was the lack of petitionary prayer. I've made exactly one petitionary, like one prayer to Amida in my whole life, which was I was at a have I told you this story?
I don't know. I don't think so.
Interrupt me if I have. I just think it's
Yeah.
relevant. That this like well, we wanted to talk about Indonesian Buddhism at some point.
Oh yeah.
This
Yeah.
like this some within Indonesia, there's this practice where like some Vajrayana, Mahayana, and Theravada sanghas are all sort of co-affiliated, so they share a single temple.
Okay.
So there's
Mhm.
one of those kind of temples, and so it kind of looks very eclectic. But in the main hall, they had like a Mahayana style triad of Shakyamuni in the middle, Amida on one side, and the medicine Buddha on the other side. And after the service, what people would do is they would go and sort of pay respects, is I think how it was phrased, to all the different altars around the temple. There's maybe like a dozen. Um, and I remember sitting in front, like kneeling in front of this Amida statue would be to the right of Shakyamuni, but to my left. Um, and just being like, please lead me to like the right form of no, it was that please like I was looking into Pure Land, and there's this kind of overwhelming array of different Pure Land schools, like even just within the
Mm,
Japanese
mm,
schools, and then
hmm
that's without
hmm
getting to the Chinese schools. And I was like, and then there's the also Tibetan Pure Land traditions, and I was like, just please make it so that I have access to the right one for me, because it's all very well if it's like, oh, you're really karmically, the right thing for you would be, I don't know, Seizan,
Yeah.
is it Seizan, Jodo, but like how much representation, like there is almost no access to that if you're not Japanese in
Yeah.
Japan speaking
Yeah.
Japanese, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
it's almost impossible. Um, it's, so I just and when well, that prayer was answered, but
Yeah.
that's the only time like I prayed to Amida in a petitionary manner, and then I'm like, but does that count? I mean, is that isn't it, like I don't know. Um, but and that was sort of pre-Shin
Well,
anyway. I mean, that was like what
well,
brought
Shinron
me to
didn't Shinron himself um uh
something similar
pray
to that, right? In the
yeah,
Rokugan.
pray before I think on more than one occasion, wasn't it? In his before he got to Honan, or maybe
Yeah, there was.
before he got to Honan once, and then after he was with Honan for a bit, he had another
I
vision or
don't.
something like that. I think there was. I thought there was more than one occasion where he did pray to a Buddhist deity or make a vow or something before them to, I will stay here until I receive guidance or, something along that line, wasn't there?
It was the 100 days of. I think he was continuously saying Nembutsu, but the 100 days he secluded himself at the Rokakudo, which I've been to. So it was very nice, very nice little
Hmm.
shrine. And it was in Guanyin or Kanon. I don't know. I always go to the Chinese pronunciations where it comes naturally. Um, and uh, and yeah, there's. I don't know. I can't remember exactly if it says that he prayed for guidance,
No,
but
yeah,
there
maybe
is this
not.
kind of
Yeah,
to
maybe not.
memory. But there is this kind of suggestion of that, right? And in any case, he
It's a
did do
similar
something
thing.
looking for it.
No,
Oh,
it's a
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. There's a vibe. There's a
Yeah,
similar vibe
yeah,
to it.
yeah,
Um, uh, so yeah, yeah. Uh, it's a little yeah. I mean, it's a shame it's not the same statue apparently
yeah.
of Guan Yin Hao that the Rokkakudo as when he was there. But yeah, there is that. Um, but yeah, this is one of those ones where it's like,
It
no, I know I'm repeating myself, but that's I don't just don't. Yeah. Anyway, sorry. Go on.
2 minutes. Yeah, yeah. Sorry. Yeah. The yeah, I think you've got arrived at the right one. The most accessible one, I think, is definitely Jodo Shinshu Buddhism, Shin Buddhism. It's not without there's not without its difficulties and things. But I think the absolutely the most accessible of all of the Pure Land uh, teachings or Pure Land schools or Pure Land traditions, however you want to frame that or call that, is definitely Shin Buddhism or Jodo Shinshu um, Buddhism. Um,
Sorry. Let me just is relevant. We have a minute and a half. I'll make this real quick. There
yeah,
was this early on when I was looking at all these different Pure Land schools, and what probably one of the more accessible Chinese ones is the Shandao school. Sorry, it's allergies.
no worries.
And no, it's not gone. Um, and I remember talking to someone at the beginning who had been a Jodo Shinshu person, and he kind of said like, "Well, how do you feel about the lack of petitionary prayer in Shin?" And for him, part of what brought him to the Shandao was this element of petitionary prayer. And I remember thinking about it at the time because initially I was like, "Oh, I like that," and then he made me sort of really contemplate it. And after really contemplating, I thought, "Yeah, no, I like that. I like the lack of petitionary prayer. It just that suits me." Uh,
Yeah.
so maybe on that
I sort
note,
of
should
do
we?
agree with that. When I'm in
Yeah,
a good space, most of the time, that's where I'm at with it. But there are these occasions I will admit to where I'm like, oh, I wish I could, or I need to, or it'd make things easier if I could just, you know, do that petitionary thing in that more conventional way. But anyway, this has been an excellent discussion. These three sessions have been an excellent, excellent discussion.